and heard about the careers they were building for themselves. In Lakewood, I saw firsthand the hard and rewarding labor of child care providers. I witnessed their patience, their kindness, and the love that they bring to their work. Our state has its struggles, like every state, but none are insurmountable because we are the Golden State, and we get big things done. And my promise to you is that I'm going to deliver on day one, week one, year one, and keep on delivering for this amazing state. Because together there is no challenge that we cannot overcome. We leave no community behind. We do not stop, we do not rest until all our citizens have a safe place to live, clean water to drink, clean air to breathe, safe neighborhoods to raise their children, good hospitals, clinics, and health care, and the best public schools in the world. In pursuit of this dream for all our people, I will not rest, California. In the Senate, I will be a champion and voice for all Californians, whether you voted for me or not, whether you live in the big city or a small county, whether you grew up here or came to America searching for a better life. We are going to build more affordable housing, so that you aren't forced to choose between your rent and putting food on the table. We are going to ensure that our fellow neighbors do not have to sleep on the street. We are going to help hardworking families by lowering costs. We are going to fight tooth and nail to protect abortion access and defend democracy and our freedoms. We are going to bring resources and jobs back to the Golden State to create opportunity for all Californians. We're going to fight on behalf of our dream workers, our farm workers, our immigrant families, so they no longer have to live in the shadows. We are going to protect our planet, fight climate change, and bring good-paying green jobs here to California. It is a big task, I know, but we can do it because we are going to do it together. I am determined to fight every single day on behalf of this great state and its great people. And I am so thankful for your trust and your support. And I can't wait to do this job with you together. I want to thank my incredible wife, Eve, and yes, we are Adam and Eve. My kids, Lexi and Eli. Lexi's boyfriend, Eric, gets a shout out. My brother, Daniel, and his wife, Amy. My brother, David, and his family. My nieces and my nephews, and of course, the one the world revolves around, baby Maya. I could not have done this without your endless love and support, and it's so wonderful to get to celebrate with you tonight. Eve, I don't know where to begin, but this Adam would be lost without this Eve. I love you, and I'm grateful to you for your strength and love. Lexi and Eli, being your dad is my favorite job in the world. I love you, and I am so proud of you. And I also want to acknowledge my mother and father, Cheryl and Ed Schiff. While they're no longer with us, I wouldn't be standing here but for their love and guidance and support. My father lived to be 96. He passed earlier this year. And I so wish he could be here with us tonight. Dad, give Mom a hug and tell her I hope she's still not upset with me for not being a doctor. I also want to thank every volunteer and supporter who made calls, sent texts, knocked on doors, and chipped in a few bucks, because your hard work not only made this Senate race possible, but you are going to deliver the House of Representative Majority to Hakeem Jeffries tonight. And I want to thank Nancy Pelosi. the greatest of all time, the most incredible speaker in our history, for her friendship, her mentorship, her leadership. There was no one who stood more in the breach defending our democracy than Nancy Pelosi, and I thank you. We set out to build the largest grassroots campaign in California history, and I think we hit the mark. To my wonderful staff, I thank you. You are all dedicated public servants who have committed countless hours, nights, weekends to this effort, and this victory is also yours. To my wonderful, wonderful constituents in the 30th Congressional District who have supported me for over 25 years, I cannot thank you enough for your confidence and the honor of representing you. I hope that I have served you well and made you proud. And to my new constituents all over the state, whether you voted for me or not, I am committed to being a champion for every Californian in every corner of this wonderful state. California, I thank you for your trust. I am grateful to serve as your U.S. Senator. Now, let's get to work.
blackmail that as we've known all along, this is a razor thin race. So right now, the Democratic Party and the Harris campaign is planning on waiting out the blue wall of states. We know this is Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. Those are the states that they're calling to be Harris's path to victory. But right now, none of those states have been called as of yet. The only battleground state that's been called is, of course, North Carolina. But those blue wall states, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan, have not been called. And this is what the Harris campaign is now holding out for. Again, making this memo known on social media, as well as sending it out directly to those campaign people who are working for Vice President Kamala Harris, saying at the end of it, Jen O'Malley Dillon saying, get some sleep. We're looking forward to tomorrow, because they don't anticipate these results until the early morning hours. So, Andy, that's what we're seeing right now on social media as it pertains to Kamala Harris's campaign.
Yeah, if the results continue to go the way they do, I don't know how much sleep those people within the campaign will be able to get. Christina, thank you, though, for that great reporting, as always.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you so much. Let's continue on discussing the latest in that turbulence within potentially that camp as well. I do want to put up this tweet from Jackie Heinrich talking about this here on Live Now from Fox, talking about 3 sources close to Harris are expressing concern over Harris's path to victory. It may be too narrow to overcome. One source at the Harris Friends and Family Party says, quote, her path is so narrow that she is not doing what she needs to do in Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. The exit polls I saw hours ago are all accurate. They need to suddenly outperform those. Don't believe that will happen. Asked about this, a second source close to Harris told me, quote, I 100% agree. The path is very difficult to victory. His numbers are higher than expected in counties where he should be losing by larger margins in Pennsylvania and Michigan. A third source close to the campaign said, I think we're losing this. Hearing word that Harris may be coming to Howard University soon, but not for another hour. So that's reporting there from Fox's Jackie Heinrich about what we're learning with this race for the White House. Not a lot of call. North Carolina was called for Trump, but Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin yet to be called at this point as well. All right, let's continue on here on Live Now from Fox. Let's bring in my colleague, Austin Westphal, also political analyst, Rich Rubino, to continue this feeling of what we're hearing from inside of the camps. Rich, I want to ask you, how concerning is it, and how real are these feelings of uncertainty within that camp?
I think it's a lot of uncertainty. It's probably a lot of pessimism within the Harris camp. I think that some of these places specifically, they thought that they were going to do a lot better when some of these counties came in. What's basically happening is that Donald Trump is overperforming. There's still a path, certainly, for Vice President Harris to win, but it's becoming a more and more narrow of a path. And I think that my guess Trump, and I think part of that is trade agreements like NAFTA, for example, disproportionately had an effect on some of these counties and some of these parts of these states. As a result, there's been a lot of job losses, and whether it's right or wrong, they blamed it on trade agreements. And those trade agreements essentially had bipartisan support. NAFTA, for example, had Bill Clinton signing it with Bob Dole, Newt Gingrich, Bob Michel in the House and Senate, respectively, getting it through. A lot of Republicans were kind of free trade, laissez-faire Republicans. It didn't really go very well. It didn't bode well in these parts of the country. Now that you have Donald Trump, and that Donald Trump has gotten to the left, essentially, of the vice president of the Democratic Party on trade, talking about tariffs, a lot of traditional Democrats, independents, conservative Democrats went over and they voted for Donald Trump the first time, and you're seeing that again. It's a problem Democrats have. It's something when Bernie Sanders ran in 2016, he also took very similar positions on issues like trade. And the other thing is that the Republicans do not have the traditional kind of anti-labor rhetoric. For example, J.D. Vance is somebody who is opposed to the idea of right to work laws. They've tried to become more and more populist and more friendly to the workers to that respect. And I think that is certainly helping them and boding well in trying to unlock that what really was a hammerlock the Democrats had from 1992 to 2016.
All right, very, very good. I do want to ask you more about Trump and the movement that is behind him. And I want to put up several of these posts here on social media. This one saying there is still no sign of Harris at a rapidly thinning watch party at Howard University, her alma mater. She could be speaking soon to a nearly deserted campus if she does not appear soon. And that is in contrast to what we're seeing now at the Donald Trump party. And I believe we have a post there of him arriving at this Mar-a-Lago post, as you can see from the New York Post, saying Donald Trump arrived at Mar-a-Lago election night party there with some of his supporters as well. And Rich, I do want to ask you about something else that was said in that post, in the reporting from Jackie Heinrich, talking about the fact that his numbers, Trump's numbers, are higher than expected in counties where he should be losing by larger margins in Pennsylvania and Michigan. What do we make of that, where Trump is, his numbers are higher than expected in some of the counties there from the Harris campaign and what they were expected? What does that mean?
You know, back in 1982, Tom Bradley, he was the mayor of Los Angeles, and he was running for governor of California. He was African American, and he took polls, and the polls show he would win anywhere from 10 to 15 points. Then people went to the polls, and Tom Bradley ended up losing. And one of the arguments why he lost the race was the so-called Bradley effect, meaning that voters would tell pollsters that they were going to vote for him, and then when they actually got to the polls, they could not vote for an African American. There are other factors as well. For example, Jerry Brown was running for Senate, and his campaign tended to flounder toward the end, and that had a disproportionate effect on Bradley. What I'm saying here is essentially that there might be voters in the suburbs of places like Philadelphia who tell pollsters, because they don't know who the pollster is, it's perhaps not politically correct to say you supported Trump. This is all speculation here, but they could be telling pollsters that they'll vote for Donald, that they're not going to vote for Donald Trump. But once they go in there, the Australian ballot, or the secret ballot, if you will, they land up actually voting for Donald Trump. So that's one scenario. The other scenario is that Donald Trump's effort, they might just have a better get out the vote effort, and they might have just had a better ground game, and perhaps that ground game was kind of underappreciated, and now they're seeing the fruits of their labor.
Let's talk a little bit about Georgia. This is one state, Rich, that we've been focusing in on. And Georgia, it's interesting. Georgia right now has 93% of the votes counted right now. Trump has about a little bit over a 2-point lead over Harris. You've been following races so closely for so long, and you don't work for the Associated Press. That's who's calling these races for us. But when you look at these figures, what do you say about Harris's chances in the Peach State?
It looks very dim. I mean, we don't know, obviously, until we get 100% of turnout. It's obviously very close, but perhaps she did not maximize the votes that she could get in places like Fulton County. It's interesting because her strategy, she actually spent 2 days on the campaign trail just riding through southwest Georgia, rural parts of Georgia, some of whom were traditionally Republican areas, to try to minimize the damage that they could have in those areas. It looks like it really was for naught. It didn't really have necessarily the effect that they thought it would. They also employed Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton went to many parts of southern Georgia, to traditionally culturally conservative, the types of people similar to those that Bill Clinton won over in 1992 when he actually won the state. He went out and tried to get those. It looks like despite what Barack Obama did, despite what Bill Clinton did, despite what Harris did, and despite what Tim Walz did, they seem to be treading water right now. And if they lose Georgia, they certainly would need to take just about all three of those states. But Georgia's a very interesting state, certainly. It has some very Democratic areas right around Atlanta. You have to maximize your turnout, as well as some of the African-American areas toward the southwestern part of the state. But it's going to be very interesting to see what the final results are going to be in the Peach State.
Yeah, I do want to ask you about that, because we're hearing different reports about Gwinnett County and maybe the delayed votes that they're going to kind of tally up there in that county. Talk about maybe some of the areas around Atlanta, because Gwinnett County around Atlanta, how strong are they for Kamala Harris? How important are some of those kind of areas around there going for Harris, and how critical will these be even if they are delayed?
It's a very interesting state. Right around Atlanta, you have areas like, for example, if you keep driving, you run into places like Marietta and Sandy Springs, which used to be very Republican. Newt Gingrich was actually represented that area for that area. So it was a very conservative congressional district. but when I say conservative, they're more or less fiscally conservative, but they're kind of socially moderate. And Donald Trump is kind of inhospitable to their ideology. So consequently, a lot of them now have a Democratic congresswoman, for example. So it's become more and more Democrat. I think this is what we're seeing around the country. This is part of the Trump effect, right? Trump does very well in rural areas of the country. He maximizes his vote, but he tends to falter in some of the suburban areas where Republicans like Ronald Reagan or George H.W. Bush were able to rack up big margins. They feel kind of alien to Donald Trump's kind of new populist type of an ideology. And those are the areas right around very much educated class, places like Marietta, where there's really not much of a Southern accent. Those are the types of places that I think Vice President Harris really thought she could capitalize on.
I got to ask you about Michigan, specifically about Wayne County. We see behind me here 55% of the votes have been tallied in Wayne County. Right now, Harris has 58% of the vote. If we're going back to the Biden election 4 years ago, Biden won that county with 68% of the vote. Why is this particular county important, Rich? I'm sure you know this. This is one of the largest areas of Arab Americans in the country. Can you tell us about how their vote factors into this election? The Israel-Hamas war has been a major talking point of both campaigns.
Yes, very interesting. We saw Donald Trump the last weekend in the campaign actually going to Dearborn, Michigan. Dearborn, Michigan has the largest share of Muslim and Arab American voters per capita. But I think that there has really been a lot in the community have been inflamed. Last time around, Joe Biden won 86% of the Muslim vote. This time around, there was a poll taken by the Center for Islamic American Relations that showed Jill Stein, the Green Party candidate in that community, remember, we're just talking about Muslim Americans, was actually winning a plurality of the vote. It's not that they necessarily liked Jill Stein per se. It's more that they were trying to send a message to Vice President Harris that they wanted there to be an arms embargo, and many of them blamed Joe Biden and Vice President Harris for continuing to send arms to Israel that are used in Gaza. So this really has been a lot of disaffected voters, Muslim voters. Some of them are going to Donald Trump. Some of them will be going to Jill Stein. And some of them are going to certainly stay with Vice President Harris. But Donald Trump has went in there. He racked up some endorsements. Some mayors in that county certainly have endorsed his campaign. But it's really been a problem for the Democrats. It's similar to what Hubert Humphrey had in 1968 in the Vietnam War. He just could not bring out a lot of those anti-Vietnam War protesters to the Democratic side. This time around, Vice President Harris has had the same, very similar problem, trying to tell them that she's a little bit different from Joe Biden, that she would favor some sort of a ceasefire. But certainly, you can see in the numbers that she's not doing as well as Joe Biden pre-Israel Gaza war.
All right, very good. Rich Rubino, thank you so much for joining us. Don't go anywhere. We're going to continue on covering all of the latest, but we do want to take a little bit of a break because we're monitoring all of these shots. But thanks you again. All right, let's give you some looks at what we're following here on Live Now from Fox of all of these states, of some of these hotly contested battleground states. In Georgia, I want to put up this post here as Donald Trump there at a lead almost over 2 points at this moment, 16 very critical electoral votes. In Pennsylvania, it is even tighter there, 19 electoral votes. Trump, though, in the lead at this point. So we're following the latest with that, as well as a key Senate seat in Pennsylvania up for grabs. Right now, Dave McCormick does lead that by just 1 percentage point. And we could be hearing from Dave McCormick here in a matter of moments. You can see the crowd somewhat get riled up at this stage there in Pennsylvania. So we'll take you out to this as soon as it happens here on Live Now from Fox. But we're also seeing movement right now in West Palm Beach, Florida, at the watch party for former President Donald Trump. We see someone on the stage. We don't know if they're setting up the microphone, getting everything. The stage is set. Camera phones are out at this point. But we're following the latest here well past midnight now, 40 minutes past the midnight here on Live Now from Fox for this. All right, let's slide away. Continue here. Let me put up this before we go to break. Just a new post from Jackie Heinrich. New reporting here saying two sources tell Jackie Heinrich close to the campaign say Harris will not address the crowd at Howard tonight. Cedric Richmond will come out and give remarks. Harris is expected to speak tomorrow, and you can imagine the crowd there at Howard University disappointed by this. You can see maybe some of them learning this news, hearing some about this, and potentially leaving for the night to see Harris tomorrow. The enthusiasm going off as is past midnight there. So plenty of people still waiting here on this election night. Let's line away for a quick 2-minute break. We'll get out to more top headlines after this. All right, welcome back in here to Live Now from Fox. We're learning that no Kamala Harris tonight at that podium at Howard University. Instead, it will be Cedric Richmond there, the co-chair of the Harris campaign. Let's listen in to what he has to say here on Live Now from Fox on election night.
But you will hear from her tomorrow. She will be back here tomorrow to address not only the HU family, not only to address her supporters, but to address the nation. So thank you. We believe in you. May God bless you. May God keep you. And go HU and go Harris. Thank you all.
All right, a quick speech there from Cedric Richmond, the Harris campaign co-chair, saying Kamala Harris will not come out tonight, encouraging people to return tomorrow to Howard University, her alma mater, to see her. And you can see the crowds filtering out very, very quickly after this, well past midnight, 12:45 on the East Coast, as the crowds are dispersing. A disappointing night not to see the vice president there addressing the crowd as we're still learning the route to 270 in place. We're also monitoring this live picture right now in West Palm Beach, Florida, at Mar-a-Lago, is West Palm Beach, where former President Donald Trump is in attendance. You can see plenty of camera phones out right now. I don't know if anyone will step to the podium here in just a matter of moments, but the mic check is going to be in place. But let's just continue to give you a roundup of what we're learning as some of the battleground states already called, that one being North Carolina, called a check mark next to his name for the former President Donald. We have not heard other checks being placed in yet, but Trump expected to speak to supporters, to the crowd gathered. You just see the amount of enthusiasm on the ground there at this watch party. Almost 1 o'clock in the morning. He was in Grand Rapids about 24 hours ago exactly at the final campaign stop of this. Of course, he is at the West Palm Beach Convention Center there. Plenty of people in attendance for this just down the road from Mar-a-Lago. So the excitement there is interesting, the contrast to what's going on right now on election night at West Palm Beach to what is going on at Howard University. Just wanted to give you a contrast of what we're looking at right there, right now. All right, let's bring into the conversation one more time Rich Rubino, as we could be here for Trump in just a second, but we did hear there from Cedric Richmond at Howard University. Rich, this is obviously not what they wanted to hear from Howard University. How unusual is it to not hear from one of the presidential candidates on election night, and what do we make of that recent speech?
It's very rare. What the kind of inside baseball line going on is, I don't know. I think there's certainly precedent for that. For example, this is an interesting one. But back in 1976, when Gerald Ford lost, he literally lost his voice from all the campaigning, and Betty Ford had to read the concession speech. But I think it's very interesting. They obviously they're probably strategizing behind the scenes. They don't know exactly what they're going to say, but she certainly will come out tomorrow. And I don't think it's going to be settled for. I don't think this election will be settled for certainly in the near future.
Rich, we've been watching, and you see how happy they are, all of those red caps at this Trump event in Palm Beach, Florida. We still have not gotten official race calls from the Associated Press for Georgia, for Pennsylvania, for Michigan, and for Wisconsin. If I can here, if you'll take me in full, Andy Mack, I want to just tease out how exactly Trump's path could lead him to victory now. So we've been talking all day about how Georgia, North Carolina, and Pennsylvania would be his easiest path. Well, on top of that, he's also going to have to get Alaska, which we do expect, as long as everything falls the way that we expect it to. We expect eventually Alaska will be called in the red. Then there's these two little areas in Nebraska, and there's one in Maine as well. Let's just talk about this map, Rich. Ultimately, it's looking like states like Michigan, Wisconsin, Arizona, Nevada. Is it very possible that some of these battleground states won't end up mattering?
Yeah, theoretically, if one candidate can win 5 or 6 of the swing states and the election is pretty much over, I don't think that's going to be the scenario. I think that every battleground state will matter. Just the fact that we only have 7 battleground states is the first time you go back to 1980 when there were only 10 battleground states. They have such few battleground states. But I just want to say something interestingly. The reason that you're talking about Maine and Nebraska is because they award their electoral votes, unlike the other 48 states, to whoever wins their state. They award 2 electoral votes to the person who wins their state, and then the rest of the electoral votes are spread up to congressional districts. So the one in Nebraska, it's called the Blue Dot District. That's right around Omaha, and that's a college town. So it's the only part of Nebraska that is potentially blue. So that's very contested. And the reason Maine is contested, Maine, right around Portland, that area is very liberal. But if you go to the second congressional district, which starts right around Lewiston and Auburn at the bottom, and goes all the way up to Caribou, very rural district, that tends to be a little bit more red. So that's why those can matter. And there's theoretically a possibility that if one candidate musters just 269 electoral votes, that one electoral vote could put that person over the top. That's why Tim Walz, for example, actually spent 2 days campaigning in Nebraska trying to get that blue dot district in the favor of the Democrats.
All right, Rich, and I do want to ask you, because we are expected to hear from the former President Donald Trump here coming up in just a little bit. Of course, I want to put this up here as well, as Trump expected to speak shortly at the campaign watch party in Palm Beach as his YMCA walkout song comes on and Secret Service clears the lobby area here. So we could, in a matter of moments, hear from the former president as well. And I want to ask you just historical context, because Donald Trump has been in this scenario before, and we've seen him speak before some of these check marks have been placed by his name or by other people's names. What are we expecting to hear from him tonight? Could he come out and say that he won the election, even though the AP has yet to call it from him? What could we hear from Donald Trump at this speech?
That is very possible. Back in 2020, he essentially came out and said that he was at the White House at the time, that he believed he was going to win. So there is a very formidable possibility that he could say something like that. My guess is that he will say that we have to wait till the results. I think that because so far they seem to be in his favor, it's in his best interest to try to be cautious and just say something to the effect of "Thank you, everybody, for coming," and then just kind of walk away, and then hope that tomorrow he will receive a concession speech, a concession from Vice President Harris. But right now, we really don't know. Once again, only one battleground state poll has come in, and there still is a possibility for Vice President Harris, and that's why she didn't want to come out. She was trying to strategize what's going to happen tomorrow.
So let's just talk about what's the tradition when the race is not called yet. Let's be completely clear about that. The race has not been called by the Associated Press at this hour. But what is the order of operations when it comes to a concession? Does it start with a personal phone call to the other?
Yes, that's how it's supposed to work. One candidate makes a phone call, says that they concede, and then the candidate goes out and gives a speech. And usually when he gives a speech, he said, the candidate usually is very nice and says, "I appreciate my opponent. I appreciate the campaign that he ran," something to that effect. That's usually the protocol. I don't know, because we're in such a divided time right now, if Vice President Harris would actually call up and give a concession speech, if Donald Trump would come on and, kind of applaud her. But that's usually kind of what happens. Sometimes if it's a blowout, like in 1984, Walter Mondale conceded very early. There was actually an issue back in 1980 because Jimmy Carter, when he losing in a landslide, he lost 44 states that year, called up former California Governor Ronald Reagan and conceded early. And Tip O'Neill, the Speaker of the House, blames Jimmy Carter for doing that for about 10 House seats in the West Coast, because what happened was a lot of people that were traditionally Democrats in Oregon, California, and Washington State did not come out and vote because they were depressed, because they believed that their presidential candidate had lost the race. So sometimes, even if you know you're going to lose the race badly, it's the best thing in order for your party. So the candidates that are trying to run on your coattails and are trying to get as many voters to come out, it's better for that sometimes that the candidate concedes as late as possible. 2000, Al Gore conceded to George W. Bush. Then a few hours later, called back and rescinded his endorsement. And George W. Bush said, "Are you saying that you're rescinding my endorsement?" To which Al Gore famously said, "You don't have to get snappy about it."
All right, very good. That's good historical context, and interesting to look back at previous election cycles, and see what happened before. And I do want to get to some news here on Live Now from Fox. Fox News is projecting that Trump will win Georgia, but the AP at this point, as we are relying on that, the Associated Press in a significant way has not called this president these 16 electoral votes yet for Trump. 50.9 to 48.4 at this point. So he holds a significant lead, but Fox News reporting that Donald Trump will take the peach state, the AP not at this point. Let's talk about that.
Looks like we have.
Oh, looks like Dave McCormick has come out. Well, good eyes there, Austin. Rich, stick with us. We're going to continue here on Live Now from Fox, a key Senate seat there in Pennsylvania. Let's take us to it now here and hear from him on Live Now from Fox.
Thank you. What a great group of friends. We are so honored to have you all here today. And how about my wife, Dina Powell? So to say that Dina and I are partners in this whole thing, and I wouldn't have done it without her, is an understatement. She is, this is something we decided to do together, something that we felt honored to try to do. It was a mountain to climb. And none of this would have ever happened without Dina. So thank you, Dina. And now I want to just ask the question, who's ready to save America? We got to do it. We've got to do it. And listen, this election night's not quite over. Looks like we're headed in a very good direction. And listen, when we started, blessed by everything America has to offer, two of the luckiest people in the world, but that opportunity, that American dream is slipping away, and we got to get it back for every single Pennsylvanian and every single American. And we need new leadership. We need new leadership in the Senate to make sure that every single kid in Pennsylvania has the opportunity to be all that they can be, regardless. of party, race, creed. We need to create opportunity for every single person. We need to create an economy that works for everybody. We need to secure our border. We need to have energy policy that protects the environment but also makes us secure and creates great jobs. The bottom line is we need leadership. We don't have it, and we're going to get it. And so, listen, in the coming days, the election results will be finalized. And when they are, we will look forward to a new agenda, a new America. And we'll look back on this day today and we'll say that was the day that we turned the corner. That was the day that we had new leadership in Pennsylvania. That was the day that we got our country back on track. And, you know, some of you know, I think most of you probably know, I had the opportunity to go to West Point, and my brother went to West Point, and my mom and dad went with us to West Point for 8 years in a row. And they hadn't gone back for 35 years, and we took them back last fall. And with Dina's parents as well, and we walked past the MacArthur statue, and it has a very famous speech etched in granite, and the speech says, "Duty, honor, country." Those three hallowed words reverently dictate what you ought to be, what you can be, what you will be. They are your rallying point to build courage when courage seems to fail, to regain faith when there seems little cause for faith, and to create hope when hope becomes forlorn. And that makes sense to me because this is a moment where we don't have enough leaders showing courage. This is a moment where Americans are losing faith. This is a moment where America is losing hope. But we can turn that page. We can look forward. We can have an America that works for everybody. It starts now. It starts with this election. It starts right here in Pennsylvania. And so, from the bottom of our hearts, we have been so honored to campaign across Pennsylvania. 450 visits in every little town and every city. And the people we've met along the way have given us hope. They've given us faith. They've given us courage to want to represent and serve the great people of our Commonwealth. It'll be the honor of our lifetimes. Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right, you can just listen in there. Dave McCormick making these speech to supporters as he leads this Senate race against the incumbent Bob Casey right there in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. We saw both the Harris and the of course, we saw both the Harris and Trump campaigns in that state yesterday on the final day of campaigning on the eve of the election. So we're still awaiting to hear from the former President Donald Trump there in West Palm Beach, Florida at that convention center. He's expected to make some remarks coming up in just a little bit of time. I do want to put up this here just to give you a sense of what we're looking at that Senate seat, as Dave McCormick does have a lead almost 2 points over the incumbent Bob Casey right now in that state in Pennsylvania. So a very critical swing vote potentially, as the incumbent could be flipped in terms of blue to red right now. So we're following the latest here on this, and we do want to give you another call, and Fox News reporting it just a little bit ago. We are relying on the Associated Press right here about Georgia, and we are just hearing this call coming in right now at this point, talking about Donald Trump winning Georgia here just about 1 o'clock in the morning on the East Coast. As you can see, the check mark next to the name of the former president right now over Kamala Harris, the vice president. So it is now 2:46, closing in ever closer to that 270 mark right now, some 24 away at this point. Kamala Harris, 210 right now for this. So let's just continue on. I do want to give you just a contrast of what we saw just a little bit ago there in West Palm Beach, Florida at this convention center of what's coming up. in just a little bit. But also what we heard from Howard University in Washington, D.C. is Cedric Richmond did make remarks to a crowd, telling the crowd there that Kamala Harris would not be making a speech tonight. Let's take you right now back out to this, if you missed it, because it was very brief, a 90-second remarks from him, the co-chair of this Harris campaign. Let's listen into what he had to say just a little bit ago.
Good evening, Howard. Good evening, HU. I want to say good evening to all of the Harris campaign, the campaign family. Thank you for all that you have done. Thank you for being here. Thank you for believing in the promise of America. We still have votes to count. We still have states that have not been called yet. We will continue overnight to fight to make sure that every vote is counted, that every voice has spoken. So you won't hear from the Vice President tonight, but you will hear from her tomorrow. She will be back here tomorrow to address not only the HU family, not only to address her supporters, but to address the nation. So thank you. We believe in you. May God bless you. May God keep you. And go HU and go Harris. Thank you all.
That was a quick remarks there from Cedric Richmond there, the co-chair of the Harris campaign just a little bit ago. We wanted to bring you to those because it was only 90 seconds, a brief remarks saying that Kamala Harris would not be speaking to her supporters tonight there on this election eve. We also are expecting to hear from the former President Donald Trump in West Palm Beach, Florida. You can see the crowd already on their feet awaiting him to take the stage. And this comes as we are learning that Trump AP is calling it in favor, Georgia going for Trump right now. Let's continue on. Let's bring in Rich one more time here on Live Now from Fox before we hear from the former President Donald Trump, could be the next president as well. How critical was Georgia being called for him, and maybe how closer is he to regaining the White House?
Very important state. It's a state that Bill Clinton won in 1992, lost in 1996. Barack Obama was the only president to Barack Obama rather carried it, and Joe Biden certainly carried it in 2020. So it's a very critical state. It's a state that Vice President Harris spent 2 days just simply going around the state, going from event to event. They spent an inordinate amount of time trying to muster the electoral votes of Georgia. I think they viewed it as absolutely critical. It doesn't mean that it's necessarily decisive, but the fact that they've lost North Carolina was the closest state that Donald Trump won last time, and Georgia, which Joe Biden barely won last time by about 11,000 votes. Is something that it's a good omen for the Trump campaign.
Rich, yeah, ultimately, Rich. Let's kind of play this out for us here. So, we're talking about Trump with 247 electoral votes at this time. That means he needs 23 more. Pennsylvania has 19 electoral votes. Michigan has 15. Wisconsin 10. I've already gone over some of these little districts in Maine and Nebraska. Oh, and it looks like this is the first time I'm seeing that we're starting to see some results out of Nevada. Let's pull this up. 75% of the votes being tallied. Looks like Trump has 51, just about 51% of the vote. Harris with 47.6% of the vote. So it looks like Trump has a 3-point advantage in Nevada with 3/4 of the vote tabulated. Rich, your reaction?
Yes, well, Nevada is a state. It only has 6 electoral votes. It's really the smallest of the showdown states. It's a state that if you go back to last weekend, last Friday, for example, Vice President Harris was in Reno. Donald Trump was in North Las Vegas. The state that you have Clark County, which is 70% of the state, which includes Las Vegas, which tends to be more Democrat, and then you have Reno and Carson City kind of up on the edge, kind of on the northwestern part of the state. And then you have a lot of very rural counties. Sometimes it's very hard to have a ground game because you're talking about very few voters. But if you can really maximize yourself in some of those kind of rural areas for the Republican, it can very much benefit. it could very much benefit the Republican presidential candidate. But I think this certainly does not bode well for President Harris in that she obviously when you're there the weekend before the election and you're in a place like Reno, it's a state that you expect to win, and it's a state that you believe is critical to your political future.
No, that is a very good point, Rich, as we're continuing to follow the latest with all of this. And I do want to put up just the other one because I think Austin talked about it where it was 23, and we were talking about it just a little bit ago as only 24. But this was the one vote, the one electoral vote that he did get out of Nebraska, District 1 there, Donald Trump winning that one, as it's a little bit of an interesting one with Nebraska and Maine as well. And as you're looking at this, the Electoral College, the race to 270, you talk about Pennsylvania being so very, very important. What other states could be you're focusing on over this next day to get him to that 270 mark?
I think it's those blue wall states, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. They were all states from 1992 through 2016, went for the Democrat every single year, including John Kerry in 2004 when he lost. Donald Trump was able to upend his opponent Hillary Clinton in 2016 in all three of those states. It's very hard to see a scenario if he can win. If he can win two of those states, I think he's going to be elected as president of the United States. And the polls right now are showing him a couple of points ahead. So it's not impossible for Vice President Harris to win here, but she really needs she really needs almost an inside straight to be victorious here.
Rich, thank you very much for all the the always informative Rich Rubino, one of my favorite people to talk politics with. We appreciate you on this big night.
Thank you. I greatly enjoyed it.
All right. Thank you so much, Rich. We appreciate your time. As always, we'll let you sign off as well as we continue on. But we're going to hear soon enough from the former President Donald Trump coming up here in just a little bit there in West Palm Beach, Florida, Of course, we're following it very closely here on Live Now from Fox. A live picture there inside of this convention hall as well. So he will be soon to take the stage. Let's slide away for a quick 2-minute break. We'll be back after this.
in a way to not introduce her to the American public? Did that hurt her and the ability to just get organized? Does that slow momentum? And we know historically speaking, candidates that come out of really tight primary fights are weaker in the general. So she didn't have that, but she also, the Democrats as a whole, kind of didn't coalesce around a candidate early enough. I think another question that we're going to have in kind of the post-election analysis, should Trump prevail, is was her vice presidential selection the right one? And so there's going to be a lot of talk. If she had gotten Shapiro, would this be a different election outcome, particularly in a state like Pennsylvania? But again, that's all kind of hindsight being 2020, and is making a lot of assumptions that one incident kind of caused a certain result. I think it's an amalgamation of things in this election that really has led to the point that we are right now.
All right, Casey, at just about 1:30 in the morning over there on the East Coast. So we have been up very late here. Of course, here news never sleeps, especially on an election day. But any final thoughts that you had maybe when it comes to the political strategy, the campaigns, how they handled this really surprising election cycle, I would say. I mean, it was only a few months ago that it was Joe Biden that was going to be running as the Democratic nominee.
This has probably been the most unusual election in the history of the United States. And I can't overstate that. It's just the events that took place, the way that the campaign has played out. I think maybe even what we're going to see tonight in the campaign results. One of the things that I would look at, though, in this election that's very interesting is in the U.S. House, and that is a real kind of interesting dynamic as well. We know that we've had a Republican pickups in several key states, probably maybe more as the night goes on, but it's a Republican majority in the Senate. What's the House going to look like? If Trump's elected, does he have two chambers in Congress? And how is he going to leverage that to get his agenda through? And so this is just an unusual election. It's a long election night, but something that I think is really going to result in, I think, a net victory for Republicans.
Oof, that's a big statement there to say, but maybe not so bad given the facts that we've seen and kind of how everything has played out throughout the day today. Just before this, I mean, nobody really knew who was going to come out on top, but that's just how elections go, right? In this election cycle. Casey Myers, they're a public relations professor at Virginia Tech. We appreciate your time. We hope to check in soon, and we'll have to see how this all plays out.
Thank you.
Of course, we want to step away for a quick commercial break here at Live Now from Fox. A reminder, though, that we are still waiting to see if former President Donald Trump, not if he's going to speak, it's kind of expected that he will, but when is the question at this point. And plus, we are still tracking all of these results that continue to be called, not just within the presidential race, but all of these other state, Senate, and House races as well. So we'll have more coming up. All right, welcome back here to Live Now from Fox. My name is Corel Lahada, and we are continuing with our election night coverage, giving you a live vantage point right now out of Palm Beach in Florida. We're still waiting to see when step up to this podium. We do have also this, another vantage point there. And I do want to continue on with some more breaking news that we're getting in at this moment as we continue to track all of these races in the states that are being called. I want to bring this one up next year. Take a look at this. So AP has not called it just yet. Fox News is reporting, though, that former President Donald Trump did win Pennsylvania. Now, that's one of the states that we are really watching out for here. If anything, it's the one that we have been monitoring all day today, because Harris's clear path to victory would have been to win Pennsylvania. And then I want to bring up this as well as we talk about New Hampshire, some more of these states that we continue to track here. The AP has called this one, however, Vice President Kamala Harris winning New Hampshire there, 51% to 48. To continue this conversation, I'd like to bring in to the program now, obviously, someone who has been with us all day today, my colleague here, Austin Westfall. Austin, fill us in. What are we tracking?
Let's take a look at the map. Let's pull it up. So we're looking at 214 for Harris at this point. Trump still at 247. Now, the Associated Press has not called Pennsylvania yet. That's where we're going to be getting our figures from. The Associated Press has not been able to call it yet. We have heard from Fox News that they've called that race. As soon as we hear any major updates from the Associated Press, Alaska in play. We've got Pennsylvania in play, Michigan, and Wisconsin. Trump at 247. That means that he's going to need 23 electoral votes in order to claim the top prize. Where can he get those 23 from? Well, 19 of them can come from Pennsylvania. He can add 15 with Michigan. He can add 10 with Wisconsin. Any combination of these two will give Trump the presidency. Also, something that can give Trump the presidency is Pennsylvania. This one little district in Maine, that's worth one vote, so 19 plus 1 plus 3 in Alaska. That would give us